Gowanus, CSI, creek scene investigation, something we have fun with just for the hell of it.
And so you have a creek scene investigation that you've been hot on the trail on
Absolutely,
here, right?
and we have murder victims galore.
Excellent. All right. So
Freddy the fish. Who killed Freddy the fish?
So let's get to the carnage.
If we can get the carnage of our digital media to work for. This is my neighborhood. It's this gray concrete zone, and you'll notice that in the texture of the neighborhood, these large buildings are kind of flatter. And then if we overlay the historical map, what we have is the ghost of our water pass coming in the very real pattern of roofs of the urban landscape. And if we go one step further and add in the tidal marshes, what you have is all the smallest houses are outside of the green and blue zone. So right off the bat, what you thought is just an anonymous landscape has these clues in it. You can.
So it's the large buildings and those large plots that you're taking as the first buildings, the first school, the first factory.
They are yes, to a certain degree, they are part of the process of firsts, where the people first come in, build the small buildings on the dry ground, and then progressively start colonizing the less desirable land with larger buildings, with the institutional buildings of factories.
So let's move down through our crime scene.
And essentially, this became relevant because here it was Katrina, and in my neighborhood it was Sandy, and we had these floods. No one gave a hoot about water issues until suddenly they cost a lot of money because they flooded our basements, they destroyed our neighborhoods. But these are periodic events. What I was interested in was Freddy the fish.
Yeah.
And what we have on screen here is a typical water quality crime in our neighborhood, where the water's so damn awful, the fish choke to death in it. There is just no oxygen whatsoever. And why is there no oxygen? Because our canals, our streams receive, in my particular case, over 1 million gallons a day of crap. Literally, that's what pours into the stream and makes it unlivable for species. So we set up the chalk mark on the river. We outlined the body of the victim, and we said, okay, what are the clues for solving the crime? And that's where we came up with a sort of fun idea of creek scene investigation. And like any, self-respecting detective, you need a set of clues. And you need some, detectives to go out and hunt for the evidence. And it's all around us.
Yeah, so this is a stream emerging in a park?
This is like the blood stain on the carpet. Right? And literally, this is what we're looking at. We're suddenly realizing, if you want to know who killed Freddy the fish, we need to know who messed around with the water. And one of the ways to do that is to go look for the puddles in the world. And that's why I became fascinated with puddles and a set of clues for finding them.
Okay.
I can give you...
So let's start with the old farmhouse,
right,
the old maps, and move through it.
Right, so I gave you the clues to, where would I get my fresh water from the old farmhouses. Other ones are, why do trees grow? So the biggest trees in our neighborhood, certainly in the urban areas, often have their roots in the old spring beds. And when you have a coincidence with a big tree next to an old farmhouse site, well, then you found your spring, you found the fountain of life that made civilization in your neighborhood possible. And other ones are less obvious. We've already talked about the really big buildings, and then some of them are really obvious. All of your neighbors have got basement sump pumps that are just pumping out water whenever it rains. Why? Because they built on the old stream bed. And then the other one is puddles. Why do puddles exist?
Because the stream's surfacing, right?
Yeah, the stream's underneath the tarmac, and it's slowly eroding away the sediments. It's still moving, and as it moves, it eats away the dirt underneath the road, causing it to sink slightly. And I have this game now with my daughter where I'll see a puddle, and I'll say, bet you 50 cents or $50, whatever we feel like, is there's a puddle around the corner. And there always is, because typically the stream will be running across at a diagonal across the street grid, and you can find the ghost footprints marching across the urban landscape, because you'll see these puddles going from intersection to intersection.
So let's meet your team. So here we go.
And here we have the glamorous Gowanus CSI team, and what we have is the less glamorous sewage sludge that they're about to confront.
And they are, of course, this is of course GLAM, the Gowanus Low
Altitude Mapping Team, and
yeah.
they were originally set up to look at vegetation patterns and better understand everything that lives in our neighborhood. We wanted an inventory of life of our riverbanks, and to look at all of the different species that grew there, what failed, what succeeded. So if we were going to start restoration programs, that we would use species that worked for our needs. So here's an example of a CSI breakthrough. We realized that this is right after Hurricane Sandy, where we had so much sewage in the local canal that it literally turned a milky color. But that turned out to be this really useful thing. What was really gross and disgusting for some people was effectively dye tracing for us. So the sewage was so dense that it allows us to see the historical streams that were flowing into the canal that we had never noticed before. And so this is an example now of a historic spring that was discovered as a result of watercolor of Sandy. And then going to that exact spot, it's still there. It's bubbling. You think of it, well, I'm calling it a ghost stream, but it's still very much alive. But what's really interesting is if you look at the concrete grid slab, there's a streak of green growing across it. That's unusual. So if we look at it more closely, it's the area circled in red here. That is growing there for a reason. And one of the things you realize with clues is everything happens for a reason. Nothing is really random. So if plants are growing somewhere,
There's gotta be water.
And if we take the old historical map that I showed you earlier,
There it is.
you notice it lines up with the green pattern. And in this particular case, remember we talked about grandpa needing to settle where there's fresh water? There's a source for that, and the largest spring, the largest tree, it happens to be right there, and this is the Denton's Mill building where the battle took place.
You've got an old building, you've got a large tree,
Yeah.
you're seeing greenage under the existing pavement.
And what we've done is effectively located a historical Revolutionary War site right on one of the areas that we're going to have to remediate under the Superfund plan. And this, for the community, is super strategic, really useful data, because now we can argue that we should be getting federal funds because this is America's first cemetery.
So you've got intersection of, you've got a Superfund site and a historical monument, so that doubles your
Right.
ability to create a space.
And community interest
Yeah.
and federal interest, and really to find an area of common good, because this is not about, finding problems. It's really about identifying opportunities and solutions for making things better, and getting a finer grain of data possible that gets those solutions to the front, with that we can identify what those opportunities are. This is where Grandma's memories comes in. She has got this painting of an old pond on her living room wall, and I realized everyone's memories matter. And so I went to the Historical Society and I said, give me any picture that you have of water, a well, a spring, a river. And I said, well, we have hundreds of those. And I said, give them all to me. And then I started figuring out, well, where is it? Are there clues for geo-referencing an old painting from 1850 back to the current landscape? And this one, I happen to recognize the buildings here, and I can see the old Denton's Pond in the background, and so I'm able to start tying this in to the historical map. I know that that's the building, and the spring is near there. And so I started collecting all of the historical paintings and then putting them all on a map and tying them back to a modern GIS system, and was able to then start identifying the names of all the springs around the old industrial canal, and then rebuild what its theoretical network would have been, using digital elevation models in this case, but also just plain old grandpa common sense, grandma intuition. And using the combination of computer models, we were able to figure out, okay, all the largest buildings are where the ponds are. These are all our local schools. And sure enough, the computer model and the historical maps show that this is where the old ponds are. And if we go to the actual park now, why is there such a huge puddle there? because it's on the old landfill pond site. And so all around our neighborhood, we were able to start rebuilding not just the historical ghosts that are hidden underneath our landscape, but also the opportunities for restoration. We had now these big floods. Why can't we design our parks to better handle some of the pressures that we're going to face with climate change? And this is the photograph I just showed you, and this is what that park looked like during Irene, another hurricane we had. And so the question becomes, how do we design flood parks, management systems like for New Orleans, for Brooklyn, that are going to handle very real changes that we're going to have in the future?
Well, that's amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
That's really
Great.
beautiful.
Thank you.